and I'm Mondaire Jones seeking the Democratic nomination in this district, which includes parts of Westchester and all of Rockland County.
What are the top points that you want the Westchester County Post readers to know?
Yeah, this is an election for the first time in a generation. Literally, there's not been an open congressional seat in this district in 31 years. And as this race has gotten really crowded, I have asked people to remember at least one thing about me, and that is I am running for Congress because for me, policy is personal. Unlike many of the people we're used to seeing in our politics, I don't come from money or from a political family. When I was growing up, no one ever told me I'd be in Congress. In fact, I grew up in Section 8 housing and on food stamps, raised by a young single mom who, like so many women all throughout our district and all throughout this country, had to work multiple jobs just to be able to provide for our family. And so when we talk about things like a $15 minimum wage being absolutely necessary at the federal level, I think of my mom and my own struggles when we were growing up just to survive this economy. And she got help raising me from my grandparents. My grandfather was a janitor, and later he was a small business owner. And my grandmother cleaned homes. And when daycare was too expensive, she took me to work with her. So now I'm running to represent the same people whose homes I watched my grandmother clean growing up. And so when some candidates like Elizabeth Warren, who endorsed my campaign on January 28th, talk about providing universal child care in this country, that's a fight that I really want to join if I'm fortunate enough to get to Washington based on my own experience, because I don't think anyone should have to go through that.
Very, very important. So there are so many, 31 years is a long, long, long time. And it's going to be, I see it kind of like a social whiplash to go from where we were 31 years ago to now. We've been through a lot as a country and as a society locally here. I like that you're talking about sustainable solutions for the middle class, the working class. That's very important. What are right now the hot topic, of course, is COVID. What are your comments on that? And maybe we don't need to talk about what your critique of what's of the response so far, unless you want to. I'd be more interested in the roadmap that you see moving forward.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that, because none of us knew that COVID would happen. But my goodness, if COVID hasn't exposed the inadequacies in our social safety net, then I don't know what could do that. We are seeing now that our failure as a government to require employers to provide paid sick leave in the Family and Medical Leave Act, the FMLA, has made this public health crisis worse, because people who are sick are still having to go into work because Congress has failed to provide them the kind of meaningful, immediate cash assistance that they desperately need on a significant basis. A one-time check of $1,200 can't do much for anyone in the lower Hudson Valley, which I'm seeking to represent in Congress. But it's also shown us the fact that a healthcare system that largely requires you to have employment in order to receive health insurance is completely untenable. I mean, since March, we've seen over 30 million people lose their jobs. And so we need what I support, which is Medicare for all. And that is something that would literally ensure that everyone in the United States of America has health insurance, regardless of their economic means. If you look at the polling, you see that the vast majority of Democrats support Medicare for all now. And that was true, frankly, in this district, even before COVID happened. And nationally, a majority of Republicans support Medicare for all. It's like overnight, people began to realize how even if they have health insurance and other people do not, it still impacts them. So it's an opportunity to really talk about these issues and to push it through in the form of legislation that's coming out of Washington, D.C. I would also be fighting for immediate cash assistance. Again, not just a one-time $1,200 check. I support Representative Maxine Waters' bill in Congress, and she would give $2,000 to every adult, $1,000 for every child. And that is, when you pair it with rental assistance or really a moratorium, frankly, on the collection of rent and mortgage for people who cannot continue to pay at the moment, that is the kind of relief that is really going to make a material difference in the lives of people in this district. And those are some of the things that I've really been fighting for. And I've been writing about it a lot. And of course, would want to be championing that as a member of Congress.
Well, I'd like to invite you to send me some of these things that you're writing. I am very interested in public health issues. That's my background. And so when we're talking about sustainable programs and community-based policies that help people feed their children, I think a silver lining out of this pandemic is highlighting the importance of things like health insurance that's not linked to employment.
Yeah,
among other obvious points, like the health of the most vulnerable populations impacts all of us. And so it really behooves the ones in power to make sure that the most vulnerable are as safe and protected as possible.
Absolutely. You know, I wrote about this in NIAC News and Views and also in the Journal News, just talking about how we can be doing so much better. And, you know, most recently, we've seen data come out from even in the lower Hudson Valley and Westchester and in Rockland counties. We've seen a disproportionately high number of deaths among the Black and Hispanic communities. And politicians and folks running to be in office have been bemoaning this. This is so terrible. Absolutely, it's terrible.
And they're acting surprised.
And they're acting surprised.
That's what makes me laugh in a kind of very sad way, because they haven't been paying attention at all if they're surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that Black and Hispanic people disproportionately have underlying health issues.
Right.
And because they have a disproportionate amount of challenges or number of challenges when it comes to accessing necessary medical care, including preventive care, right? So, of course, when something like COVID happens in a system where not everyone is even able to have health care, that we get precisely what we're seeing right now. And so I think it's really incumbent upon people of good conscience to be pushing our elected officials to fight for and enact the kind of policies that would actually eliminate those disparities rather than only paying lip service to these issues.
Well, there's a very short, straight line between poverty and health status. And we need to pay more attention to that for sure. There's so many factors going into that. So yeah, absolutely agree. So we're coming up on the end of our window. Time flies. It's been so good to meet you, and I look forward to being in more communication with you in the future. What is your parting comment for us today?
You know, we have the chance to elect a champion for working people to Congress from this district. As I mentioned, these seats don't just become available. In fact, it's the first time in a generation. And so it is important to recognize that there are real differences even among Democrats, right? It's not just enough to have a letter D next to your name. You know, I'm not taking money from corporations, unlike my opponents. And I'm also fighting for the kinds of big structural changes that would actually improve the lives of everyday people. You know, folks would have you believe that it was fine before Donald Trump got elected. But the fact is, for too many Americans, they were still struggling to get health care. They were still crushed by student debt. We got thousands of people in this district, my age and younger, despite having college degrees, having to live at home with their parents and their grandparents, and largely due to a student debt crisis to the tune of $1.7 trillion now nationally. And so these problems pre-existed Donald Trump. And so if all we do is vote him out, that will still not be enough. We have to be fighting for the kinds of legislative solutions that improve the lives of people. In this race, I'm uniquely the person talking about how government has never worked for everybody. It's only ever worked for a subset of the American population. And I think a lot of people understand that. You know, if you are middle class, if you are Black or brown, if you are a member of the LGBTQ community, if you're a woman, you know, whose rights are under assault daily by the Supreme Court and GOP lawmakers, this is something that you understand. And so we've got a chance on June 23rd to chart a better future for the Democratic Party, and by virtue of that, the United States of America. I'm proud to have the support of Elizabeth Warren, the Working Families Party, United Auto Workers, you name it, and to have outraised most of my opponents in terms of fundraising, mostly based on grassroots donations. And so I would ask people to go to mondaireforcongress.com, MONDAIRE FOR Congress.com, sign up to volunteer, consider making a contribution, and please tell your friends to vote, and you yourself vote in this Democratic primary on June 23rd. Thank you so much.
Register to vote, and respond to the census for 2020. That's also very important.
Absolutely.
And tell us, what are your social media handles?
Yes, so you can follow me on Twitter at Mondaire Jones. You can follow me on Instagram at Mondaire for Congress. You can follow my page on Facebook. And of course, you can email the campaign at info@mondaireforcongress.com. And we check that throughout the day. So I'm really proud to be running a campaign that is responsive to the people I'm seeking to represent in Congress. And I'm really honored to have been able to interview with you today.
Thank you so much for your time. You got any last shout outs?
Shout out to my mom. I know it's a belated happy Mother's Day, but I wouldn't be here were it not for her, literally, and because she has always told me to dream big and fight hard.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Mondaire's mom. Thank you for being such an amazing woman. I look forward to meeting her one of these days.
Yes.
And thank her personally for one of many great contributions that she's made to the world. So thank you so much, and we'll be in touch, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.